just in time for my mouse to stop working. Great. Excellent. Excellent. I love it when my mouse stops working. Fortunately, I've got a trackpad, but that's okay. Now all I got to do is figure out how to record this here and record to the cloud. There it is. We're good. All right, ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages, we are live and broadcasting to Facebook and YouTube right now. So welcome everybody from Facebook and YouTube. And I believe we're also on Twitter. And just an FYI, if you listen to podcasts and you Google SoundBroker, RoundTable, or Jan Landy Thinking Out Loud, you will find we are on Amazon Music as well as a podcast. So that's pretty cool. We are there. All these things. And welcome everybody. I hope everybody had a great week. This is the RoundTable. I went back to calling it the MasterMind because everybody here has something to offer in thought process, and the logo looked much better as the SoundBroker Mastermind Roundtable rather than just the Roundtable. So that's it. And so we got a lot to talk about, a lot of news to talk about that will affect our industry. Some won't, but most of it will. And just remember, everything you hear is an opinion. So make sure you do your own fact checking so that you feel comfortable with the information that you're getting. And with that, I'll say hi to everybody who's on the panel. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
So, did anybody watch William Shatner go to space?
I saw him land. He was pretty moved.
Yeah, he had an interview. They interviewed him at Comic-Con. He didn't even know where he was, but he said how scared he was of going up in space. And it turns out, I was thinking about it, how he ended up on the flight and whether he had to pay for it. But actually, Jeff Bezos gave him the free pass. So there he is. So Jeff Bezos was the one who paid for his trip to space. So he went to some place where man has gone before, which is unusual for him, So it's interesting.
Bezos made it all back in publicity. So having Shatner go into space, everybody watched. And
you're right.
He was so moved when he came back. He was saying, "This is something that everybody in the world should experience," And he was like almost in tears. He was so moved.
And he was the second Star Trek actor to actually go into space.
Really? Who was the first?
Well, it's sort of the other way around, but there's an astronaut named Mae Jemison who was given a guest role on a Star Trek episode years ago. So technically, she was the first Star Trek actor in space. Of course, she wasn't a Star Trek actor when she went to space, but details.
Well, now she is.
Details.
She is.
He's the captain.
Like I said, was it Captain Picard?
No, Mae Jemison is an African-American woman in her 40s.
Well, very good.
Captain Picard.
Okay, well, speaking of Captain Picard or Captain Kirk, those are very rare fossils, and the archaeologists found a rare 2,700-year-old toilet in Israel, and they're saying it was pretty comfortable. So the Washington Post reporters overlooking the Sea of Jerusalem stone buildings at King Solomon's first temple. A wealthy man from the 7th century BC built himself a place where he could appreciate what is recognized as one of the best views of the ancient cities. So there you have it. There's some news that you could take with you in your conversations, that they found the oldest toilet known to man there in Israel. So
I just want to know why you got to go to Israel to have a crappy experience. I can do that here easy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of crappy experiences, so Paul McCartney went out and finally said that John Lennon was responsible for the Beatles breakup. Did anybody ever think any other way? I mean, when he brought Yoko Ono into the band, did anybody ever think that that wasn't the reason why the band broke up? Why Paul McCartney would have to say
it was always Yoko.
It's disappointing. It's disappointing that he says it now when John can't defend it, George isn't here to refute it, and Ringo's not gonna. I don't know.
But if saw the interview, he did it. He said he was very respectful about it. I mean, he said, John wanted to do sit-ins for peace and take up some environmental causes, and I think he said something to the effect of, who wouldn't want to support that? Like he was very supportive of it. It was just, apparently John walked in and just flat out said, "I'm done. Have a nice day."
Yeah, he said he wanted to go out and do his own thing, which is, hey, look.
It wasn't like, hey, let's do one more album, do a quick tour, and then I'm wrapping it up. I got other things to do. It was like, hey, I changed my mind. What's for lunch?
But he also said something interesting. He said the Rolling Stones were basically a blues cover band, that their wheelhouse was pretty small compared to what the Beatles wrote. And that was an interesting one. He said they were a great band, but what they wrote was basically blues cover songs.
Yeah,
I gotta agree with that.
I don't know that I disagree.
Right. And then I don't remember which one it was, so I don't know if it was Jag or not, said, yeah, but which one of us is still performing which band is still out here? So like little digs back and forth.
Speaking of being out here, so Jan didn't get it, but the Stones played Nashville last Saturday night. They hit town on Friday, and the band went out partying down on Broadway, and Jagger went through Tootsie's and sang Honky Tonk Woman. They got up in Tootsie's, and then he crashed a pedal tavern with a bunch of bachelorette girls and drinking with them and hiding a bachelorette party, and they ended the night up at the Wild Beaver riding the mechanical bull.
I also saw something where Mick Jagger went to a bar and no one recognized him either.
He was wearing tennis shoes and a cowboy and a baseball hat and some other stuff. It was like, you didn't look like, he was disguised a little bit.
Yeah, that was in North Carolina, if I recall correctly.
Well,
Wow, that is too cool.
Friday night too.
And it wasn't like he just walked in, grabbed the beer, and left. He hung out for a while, and nobody clued in.
And then they arrived in LA. They arrived in LA and they said, we're not going out. We have to rehearse. Because the first time they're playing at SoFi, and they LA is a big, it's a big.
I don't think anyone will argue with the Stones' success, but I think, to Paul McCartney's point, I don't think anybody will call the Stones a fountain of amazing songwriting, or they won't call them master lyricists anytime soon. Great musicians.
Oh, I would beg to differ. I remember when I was at the Rolling Stones fan club meeting.
I like it when you beg.
Yeah, well, you don't see that very often. But I was at I'd sold the Rolling Stones monitor consoles, and so I happened to be at the show. They invited me to the show, and Jake Berry was giving a talk to the Rolling Stone fan club, which was huge. And of course, he was saying that this is the best band, the best songs, they have more hits than any other band. So, just from a financial standpoint of view, what band has got more hits? Or, when you think of songs, there's the Rolling Stones have been around forever. And I'll point one other thing. If you ever want to read an interesting book about the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards wrote a book called Life. And it's about that thick. It's amazing. But it is the most in-depth report on the Rolling Stones you would imagine. He was so candid on it, it seemed to me. And the reality is that he would agree with what Paul McCartney said in that book. So, yeah,
There's another thing I read about the Beatles. And they said that when McCartney and Lennon were writing, and I think McCartney was talking about it, that one of the things they agreed upon was never to write a new song that sounded like one of their old songs. Every song had to be completely different than what they've done in the past. And they did it. If you think about it, almost every one of their songs are completely different than all their other songs. Pretty impressive.
Jan, are you one of those silly people who's going to try and argue that the Beatles aren't the greatest, most significant rock band in history?
No, absolutely. I had a friend that believed that the Beatles were, were demonic, and that it was a game plan that you would hear a Beatles song every day, no matter what, to put it into your mind. But no, I think the Beatles were the best rock band ever in the history of the planet. And when I think of the songs that go through my head, they're mostly Beatles songs that I think about.
Look at the nice
Question is
sound
what's your
image
favorite
people
Beatles song?
joining us.
What's your favorite Beatles song? I mean, I think mine might be "A Day in the Life." That's one of my favorite songs.
And see, there's a couple of Beatles songs that I enjoy a bit. There's not one single Beatles song that I actually love. And as far as writing goes, Brian Wilson kicked their ass. He might not have as many, but as far as creativeness, as far as being able to put things together in a way that reaches your soul,
Mm-hmm.
nah.
Yeah, let's compare lyrics
Rush did
to.
a better job.
I would take.
Let's
Pink
compare
Floyd.
lyrics. Let's just compare lyrics to one song about a woman. Let's say Michelle or Barbara Ann. Okay, there you go. I could sing all the words to Barbara Ann, but I cannot sing all the words to Michelle.
That's because there's 4 of them.
My point exactly, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, but did Brian write that or did Mike Love write that?
I don't know,
you
but I
worked
would
with
guess
them.
I would guess Mike Love based on the simplicity of the arrangement. No
Bingo.
offense to Mike Love.
But
I
it's a
mean-
hit.
McCartney himself is still in awe of Pet Sounds, and he will say that. He has.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a great album. That's one of the best albums ever. It's way up there. Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Absolutely. You're very fortunate to be able to work with them because their harmonies and the melody lines of the Beach Boys are just as good as it gets. There's no way to say, in quality of music that's not excellent stuff. And what they did with their producing and their sounds are pretty amazing. But again, I heard that some of those albums that they didn't perform on, whereas they went in and performed, and then the producer took them off and put a backup band in instead.
Wrecking
What
Crew.
was
It was the
the
Wrecking
Wrecking Crew? Right.
Wrecking Crew, yeah.
On
Yeah.
what?
a lot.
On some of their earlier albums. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Moving on, there was a strange radio signal discovered coming from the middle of the Milky Way, and it could have been the Beach Boys, but it wasn't. So basically, just an FYI. So is there life out there? Well, maybe there is. And if there is life out there, and you want to expand it, Viome, which most of us are on right now, is having a sale, 50% off. So if you, it's a 50% off at checkout of. The code is BOGO50 at the checkout, and I believe what it is, you buy one kit.
Kind of wanted
and you
the
get your second
opportunity
kit.
sometime to be able to describe
Hey,
to them
what's
Yeah.
so somebody just
things I
came in
think
and
they
shared
could
the
be
screen.
doing, I think. Hi, Jan.
How did that happen? Hey, look who's
Hey,
here.
you buddy.
We got some guests.
Hello.
Vince
We were
Edwards.
sorry to interrupt, gentlemen. I'm just popping in for a second. We just keep having shows come in. We just did a demo with the Bose people. That was who was all in the conference room. They just left. But I wanted to come in and say hi to Jan. And I've watched a couple of the prior episodes. It's great to see you, Jan. We are very much looking forward to having you on our show tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We are going to chat you up for a solid hour and learn your story. I love what you guys are doing. We're going to try to make this more of a regular occurrence, if that's okay with you guys to come in. This is Michael Brown, my executive producer and our audio manager here at Sound Image.
What's up, guys?
And we just want to say
Anybody
hi.
doesn't know Vince Edwards, say everybody,
Hello, guys.
welcome. Yeah, by the way, just an FYI, I did not get the link yet, so remember to send me the link so I could be
Coming in a couple minutes here.
Mikey's got you.
Very
I get it
private.
started.
There you go. That's
And I might- and-
very, very good.
Not to be trolling or anything, but I was real curious about Michael Farley's availability here in the near future. I'm hoping he might consider coming and hanging out with us.
Man, I don't know anything. What are you talking about?
You stop it right now with that false humility. Listen,
We'd like to at least prove that.
Oh, calls me out too. Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
The good thing about it is that if you want someone who's outspoken, Michael Frawley is the man. That's for
yes,
sure.
I'm aware. I'm aware of that, and I do want that because I need to populate an hour of a talk show. So it would be very, very
You're gonna
helpful.
have to, if you get Michael on the show, you're gonna have to extend it to 2.5 hours.
I've gotten pretty good at knowing how to shut the train down. You know what I mean?
I got a lot of friends around here. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, and I know this. I know this very much.
Anybody need to hang their hat on the knife back there?
Yeah. No, super interesting man. Basically everybody on this panel is super interesting. Greg Baker, if you don't know who Greg is, his story is amazing. Ken Porter, amazing story. David Dansky, amazing. There's so many people that Ken Porter, man.
Yeah.
The music of the South. Or bringing in all the religious people to the 21st century with sound systems. Wayne's down there in Australia, in the middle of nowhere, bringing music to the people. It's the people that are showing up are really, they've all got wonderful stories. Everybody's got a great story, and I'm so happy that, and everyone here has got their own opinions, and we're all excited to have those opinions in the show as well.
Yes, sir. No, I
So
would.
it's great, and I'm looking forward to being on your show. I've been thinking about it a lot. Hypothetically speaking, I'm going to have a lot to say. There you go.
Well, I've written you a show right here, and I'm usually good for about 20 questions on a show, and I think it will be a lot of fun. You got a lot to dig around.
I can promise you that I will be in fine spirits. and
Well,
I'm looking forward to. It's called Beyond the Backstage Pass, and tell us where could people find it?
Well, most people watch it on Facebook Live. I have a rather large footprint on Facebook. We have these two closed roadie groups with about 32,000 members, one called The Backstage Pass and another called Death by Loadout. And it's pretty much just for us folks. And so the show is called Beyond the Backstage Pass, which is a kind of a companion piece to that. And they can find it on Facebook Live, where most people watch it, YouTube and Twitch. And we have about, I want to say you will be our 78th episode. We've had everybody from Greg Price and Brad Maddox, Ken, Pooch on, Tater, Yakubowski. It's somebody that you would know they've been on. Robert Scoville.
You had Mark Gander on. Mark Gander, I've known Mark Gander for 40 years, and I learned more about Mark Gander watching the 1 hour show with him than I wish I would have known that when I was friendly with him. When I was in the office with I used to work at JBL's office when I first started SoundBroker, and I didn't know any of that about Mark. All I knew that is he had designed most of their speaker systems, at that particular time. But I had no idea what his history was. I never sat down with him and got that. But man, so your show is very in depth, and I really like it. A lot, and I'm honored that you have chosen me to be interviewed. As Mike Frawley said, what do I have to say? Well, if you want to know what I have to say, you have to tune in tomorrow.
That's right. That's exactly right. The idea of the show is that we were thinking every week we would, this started pre-COVID, right around COVID when it first started, and we were, I was with Bernie Broderick, who's kind of somewhat of a loudspeaker legend, designer in the game for L Acoustics, Adams, and EAW. And he just missed him. He just walked out of the office here. And the idea was to highlight each week a different discipline in the industry. So one week it could be audio, next week it could be some folks from lighting and scenic, just whatever. And so we really hit the gamut. We've got everybody from Iron Man's people to Snoop Dogg's people. We're very lucky to be kind of centrally located and have a lot of friends. So it's been really lovely. And the general idea was to kind of keep the spirits up. We'd be seeing some folks that were kind of struggling with the last 18 months. And so we just kind of remind them why we do this and why, and talk stories of stuff on the road and backstage antics and so on, have some fun with it. So that was always the idea. And I think the mission statement of the show has proven out pretty well. And we had some been very lucky with getting good guests and people like yourself, Jan. So yeah, and we're always reaching out. So if any of you guys would be interested, give me a minute. I'll get around to reaching out to you. We'd love to have
you. Could put the link in the chat. Put the link in the chat, and everybody, anybody wants. But you're easy to reach. But I have a question for you because you're dealing with a lot of people, and what I'm hearing right now is good labor is hard to find. For example, in a poll that was just done by small business owners, 9 out of 10 in small business owners says there's a lack of qualified applicants and there's a labor shortage. Does anybody else feel that way? I mean, is anybody in the room? Are you having any problems with labor?
Well, I can speak for here at Sound Image. I wouldn't call it problems, but staffing fully. This week we've got Wilco, we've got Third Eye Blind, we've got John Legend. We have a batch of shows out.
Vince, one thing, you're tapping your finger on the desk, and your microphone must be on the desk, so we're hearing the drum beat of the fingers. Okay, just so we can't hear your words.
Thank you, Jan. I've got a pretty thick roster going on in shows as we speak right now, and we're getting them basically staffed. But when it comes to things like stagehands, particularly in the union sites, we've got here in the Bay Area, we have quite a few union houses, places that require union. It will call for 16 hands, and 4 will show up. So there has been a little bit of that, but the core folks, the A1s, the A2s, the L1s, L2s, so on, we're doing pretty good at that. A little struggle here and there, I won't lie, but we're getting the shows staffed.
Okay, Ken, what about you, Ken Porter? What are you seeing?
I'm mostly shortage of system engineers, trying to find ones that know what they're doing and getting the stuff up. The other one is juggling around when we have somebody has to pull out, or we have somebody test positive, or there we have to move people around. That's when it's hard to pull it together.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, what about you? Are you seeing any problems with labor?
Yeah, kind of like Ken, just finding people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Now,
yeah,
Michael,
always been a problem though.
Now, Michael, you did the show, you did Cavallo and or Cavalo, and did you have a problem with shortages?
No, but I hired the labor firm that services that concert venue. And I specifically hired them because I knew they wouldn't screw over a client of their biggest client. But yeah, they all showed up. The ones that needed to, we didn't require masks outdoors. We did require masks indoors. They were all happy to comply. Didn't hear a peep about it. And I had a call for 4 on one day and 4 on the second day. On the second day, I only got 3, but I got 3 rock stars. So that turned out pretty well. The quality was good. I'm a little spoiled by Vegas. So I know when I go to other markets that to not necessarily expect as much, but I was fine with who I got, and it worked out well.
Well, you were in Texas, right? This was in Texas.
Correct.
Now, what city?
Arlington, which is halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth.
Okay, for those people who don't know where that is, look it up on a map.
I'm out of Dallas, so.
Yeah, but so now the interesting thing is that Los Angeles approved vaccine requirements for most indoor venues, but then Florida now, Greg, what's going on in Florida with vaccines?
Well, yeah,
and
Florida
and rules?
basically, yeah. I mean,
What's happening?
Currently right now, almost every major venue is quote under investigation by the state for violation of a law saying that you can't have a vaccine passport. Okay, so the artists come in, they have the rider and saying, hey, either everybody's got to be vaccinated or have a recent test, or you don't play, or we're not playing. That was with, Keith Urban, and most recently with Cooper and Ace at Mid Florida. Also all the theater productions, Hamilton just rolled through for a week. And the crazy thing is the local IA is following the rules. And now they're under investigation because they're telling their people saying, hey, it's your right if you don't want to get vaccinated and don't have a test. But guess what? You're not getting this gig. So they're pulling me out of mothballs. And I've done, in the past 45 days, I've done 15 gigs, from everybody from the NFL to God knows what else. And I'm having fun with it. A 69-year-old guy showing people that, oh, so what, it's raining, get out there and wrap up the damn snake. All right, guys. But yeah, they're all under investigation, and the venues are. So it's going to be crazy. And the interesting thing with everything that's going on with the IA and, those locals out in California going up against, Netflix and all the streaming people, to pile this on top of it, I think the National is going to, weigh in now and, just dope slap the government.
Well, Florida just issued a $3.5 million fine to counties for acquiring vaccines. There's a link. There's a link in the show notes about that. So it's I don't know what's going on there and why Florida wants to kill all their people, but evidently they do.
I'm with Greg on this. I think the National is going to kick in at some point. I happened to be at a venue yesterday where we're doing some installation work in the offices, and some gear was being delivered, so I needed to be on site. And at the same time, they were loading in a Broadway show, and they had a call, and a bunch of hands showed up, and of the hands that showed up, one of them was not vaccinated, and from what I gather, the email was very, very clear that went out. You if you're not vaccinated, you cannot work this show. And so the steward dressed him down right there in front of everybody else for wasting their time. Then another one showed up and was vaccinated, but refused to wear a mask. And same thing, the steward was like, I don't know where you people are coming from, that you think this is optional, that you think we're kidding, but it's the way it is. Go home and you're not getting paid. Like, I'd never seen somebody in leadership in IATSE speak to a member that way in front of other members. And the other ones were all like, the attitude I got was like, dude, you're an idiot. Get out of the way. The rest of us have to check in. And they showed their vaccination. They went into a room, took their negative test, took a test to prove they were negative, and 15 minutes later, they were on deck setting up stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
Now,
I mean,
Brian,
I did a gig for the opening day of the NFL. Ed Sheeran was playing. I got called because half of the crew refused, to wear a mask, refused to take a test. So fine. Thanks, dudes, for the money. I mean, yeah, you can have your civil rights, but your civil rights, you got to play by the rules.
Well, and I think Kyrie Irving in New York is proving that right now. Like, and the Mets were very clear. Not the Mets.
Nets.
The Nets.
The Nets. They said, look, you absolutely have a right to not get vaccinated. That is absolutely your choice, and we respect that choice. However, that choice has consequences.
Yep.
And when you say, oh, I'll just play with the team on the road, the general manager was like, I don't know what he's talking about, but we don't have part-time players on this team. So he's not playing till he gets vaccinated, period. And It's your choice to not get vaccinated, but it's our choice not to pay you because we don't have part-time players.
Now, I know Osha is getting involved in this, but Brian, I know that you're big on the ADA. Is there a possibility that the government could bring in the ADA in this as well? To make mask mandate because of safety?
No, the ADA doesn't work that direction. So ADA would probably actually work in the opposite direction. So from the standpoint that the ADA only applies to life limiting functions. So it's the scope's too narrow on ADA for this to be applied because it's not discriminating against an individual. So, and it's more as I interpret ADA in the installation world, it's more about equal accessibility, making sure every patron has an equal opportunity to use and or benefit from the systems we install. Right. And so the ADA protects so that if you have a life limiting function, you have an alternate or equivalent facilitation to get another option or venue. That's the reason closed caption is for those that are hearing impaired. That's a life limiting function. So the closed caption allows those that can't hear to visualize what they should be hearing.
Yeah.
But
I think
OSHA,
something has to be done.
To your point, Jan, I think OSHA, that does have some legs. And I think that might end up being where the rubber meets the road, because OSHA is a federal agency and there's just not a whole lot any governor can do about OSHA. OSHA just is. And
they'll try though.
Oh, they can certainly try and use it as a platform to make a name for themselves and, you know, start boosting some votes for next year or 2024, whatever their plan is. But I don't see where any state wins a fight against OSHA.
Well, you know, the shame is that it seems to be that some low information voters are being taken advantage by their politicians for fundraising at this point. It's largely for fundraising to take advantage of science deniers and people that don't understand. You know, but first of all, I think it might start earlier in the system about civics, about simple civics classes. That our education system has failed so many of us miserably that they don't understand what it is to be in a community of people in a nation, that sometimes we do things that we don't necessarily agree with for the betterment of all. So it's right now when you have like the folks you mentioned in Texas or Florida that are for whatever reasons are not coming to the job fully vaccinated and ready to play an equal game on an equal field. Well, it keeps my friends from the faux fighters out of Texas and Florida. There's a lot of folks that are simply not going to go and put on the big shows, therefore keeping a person like me and my company in a position where we're leaving a lot of money on the table because of hard-headed, very frankly, ill-informed, stubborn people that are doing this from not necessarily a healthcare point of view, but from this weird don't tread on me place that is ill-conceived at best and downright traitorous at worst. And I feel this, to me, it has affected our bottom line in a great deal after what we've already just went through. And we're trying to get back up on our feet. I've got 280 employees that I'm trying to keep employed. And it's getting a little toxic as it relates to the culture of America, and this kind of divide seems to be just getting wider and wider. And it's coming down to governors in this country thinking somehow or another that they have some mandate. If you look at a place like Texas, for example, and what they did yesterday, that's a 47-53 state. That's basically half and half are Democrats and half are Republicans. And there's a guy in a wheelchair running around governing for the 53%. And it's costing the 47% and many of those people in that 53% bracket welfare, livelihood, and frankly, people are dying. This is the part that kills me the most. I just mentioned my group, the Backstage Pass. The person that I opened that group with, he died 2 days ago from COVID out of Florida. The partner I had in that group, he died from COVID 2 days ago because he was one of those science deniers. He was eating that stuff, their little Republican conspiracy that it was out to get him and steal their freedoms and in something against the Constitution. It's absolutely obtuse. It is obnoxious that somehow or another this is where we find ourselves as a nation, as a people, because I really don't believe that people are stupid, but it's sure right now hard to prove that not true.
Yeah, one of our panelists, Chris Carlton, who can't make it today, I was just talking before we went live, and he was telling me about a friend of his, I can't remember the guy's name, who came down with COVID, with the Delta, went into the hospital. He got it. By the time he got to the hospital, he was already unconscious. They put him, they intubated him, and then a week later when he woke up and he survived, they told him that he was one of 15 patients and that came in that way in that week, and he was the only one that survived. So his view is completely changed as well. And it's so foreign to me to use that particular word. Here in Thailand, they're fighting it like crazy. And at the elevators, every elevator, they have a sign up that if you're caught in public without a mask, it's a 20,000 baht fine. Now, 20,000 baht for the average Thai person is a huge amount of money. It's more than they make in a month. Whereas, for us, it's $700, but it's still an awful lot of money. But the government has stepped in and says, hey, this is what we've got to do. So our government, is split like crazy in this respect, because there are people like Abbott and DeSantis in Florida who don't see it the same way, and they are basically pandering to that large minority that is loudest, that's going to come up in the primaries, which are not really the voters of the fall. So when the general.
In our industry right now, there's huge debates going on with artists, whether they even want to deal with, Florida or Texas right now until all this stuff. They're going to leave a lot of money on the table. And for people who work, in our industry here, it's horrible. But, depending on what goes on with this quote, quote, investigation, if it gets traction and they get a win against the venues, the artists are just going to say, see ya. We don't need the hassle,
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, if I understand this correctly, didn't Garth Brooks stop doing big shows to do little shows? Ken Porter, isn't that what happened because he was afraid of the COVID?
No, it pretty much was, his wife was pretty much panicked by everything because she didn't fare well when she had COVID, and she's not been feeling that great. So they pretty much said that he needs to get off the road.
Oh, what do you mean? You basically have a
Hold on.
4.0. You even
Wait a second, Tina. Okay, I'll just mute her. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Well, along those lines, Jan, I don't know if you saw today, but Coachella has removed the vaccine mandate for next year's performance.
No, I didn't see that.
The other question is, how many venues with the because right now in town, there's several venues that you have to either vaccine mandates or testing, and they're losing, like the Symphony Hall basically said they can't do a weekend with 400 people and stay alive. So they canceled a bunch of stuff. But the question is now is that they're talking about mandatory everybody tested when they come in to the venue, whether they've had the vaccine or not. Were you seeing that other places?
We're not seeing that in Nevada. In Nevada, it's vaccine or test, but masks are still required for any large gathering or any indoor gathering. So if you go to the Smith Center, a Raiders game, baseball game,
well, they're talking
wear a mask. But
they're testing everyone, because we've had a fair amount of people that had breakthrough. I had a customer died over the weekend that he had the vaccine and he died. He was been on a ventilator for a week and died.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
here
the
in Northern California, what we're doing is I have a large festival going on right now in Napa called the Oxbow's River Stage. And we have it set up based on the local requirements and the promoters' requirements, which is another planet, where you show your vaccination card if you want to get in with no hassle. If you don't have that card, there's a special area set up on the side where you can pay, I think it's $40, and they will test you on site, and there's like a 15-20 minute turnaround, and if you're okay, then they'll let you in. So it's kind of a two-tiered system, but if you refuse to do one or the other, then you're just not getting in. And that's more or less the model I've been dealing with.
But they're making people that have the vaccine do that too, because they can't
Yeah.
carry it and all the stuff there, that
Yeah.
they are part of it and it's acceptable and they don't want it in, how to keep it down.
And
Yeah.
Seth is
Well,
like,
California is off the hook with regulations. I mean, they just made a law of stealthing. It's illegal now for stealthing. Now, if you guys don't know what this is, and I'm not making this up, but you guys in California can vouch for me, the California makes stealthing or removing a condom without consent illegal.
all right, I will be the first to say I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, but yes, California has been known to be a little heavy on the regulation. That goes without saying. But maybe there should be some. So I don't know. That's a tricky one. That's now we're all up in people's bedrooms and shit. That could be tricky. Unusual.
I mean, really, how do you prove that it didn't slip off? I guess you'd have to say to yourself, well, nobody wants to admit that, that turtle-like, everybody wants to say, well, I'm huge, baby, I'm huge, so I'll take.
We're moving
send
on,
me to
Jan.
jail. Send
Jan,
me to
we're
jail.
moving on.
Send me to jail, but basically,
Don't linger on this subject.
Yeah, let's move on,
but
James. to all
that's a
that
law
great
now. It's
industry
California law. I
news.
thought I would bring that in. But one thing that is going to happen that's going to affect all of us, and Polestar is reporting this now, is that CAA, which is huge, and they're gonna take ICM over.
Yeah.
So now that happens, that's one less major agency, and I am sure that on the riders, they are definitely going to be pretty conscious of COVID. And when you get a major agency like that creating riders, that's going to affect everybody.
Probably yes.
So
I'm never a big fan. PRG just took over BER 8 days. I'm never a big fan of when the consolidation's happening. Usually there's some deal that's like keep hands off for the first couple of years, and then it all merges together. They get rid of the redundant positions, and it always just works out to a bigger dividend for the shareholder and a harder job for the employee. I've never seen it go in a way that doesn't end that way. So when you tell me CAA and this other outfit is merged, which I heard about this myself, to me, it doesn't bode well for the industry.
I love it when my competitors consolidate because I stay small and nimble, and invariably they're going to bog down and screw things up, and makes me look better.
Well, you look at a company like PRG, and one of the things, when they want to move their gear systems, they have auctions in their marketplace, which I think is kind of crazy. If you're going to sell your used gear, you don't want to sell it to your competitors, because now they're bidding on jobs against you with the gear that they got from you at below market price. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Ken, you sell a lot of gear. What do you think of that?
Well, it depends on the life cycle of the gear, who it's going to in time. The problem with the PRG auction, they just do an auction and it's cheap and everybody's grabbing stuff. But, it's the people that are buying that cheap is whether they're actually competing with PRG and in that category of stuff.
Yeah, no, they're not. They're not.
Yeah, it's in my
People buying-
experience at a
People buying
PRG.
them at auction are your smaller regional companies that are nowhere near competing on the same.
If that.
And PRG is doing that to make room to buy the the new big boy toys so they can stay on top.
Well,
Yeah, it's actually that's how I've always seen it. It's PRG is using their smaller brethren. I don't want to say competitor because I agree with Michael. It's usually the regional or even just the local person that's picking up some gear that for them is a big deal. You know, that LS 932 with a Dante card, for some of them is a step up,
yeah.
And PRG is using those people's money to finance their continued growth and relevance in the big market. That's who I've only been to a couple of PRG auctions, but that's typically who I would see there is local and regional people.
Well, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I still work with a number of smaller regional companies, and it is both amazing and appalling how long they hold on to gear that has already become completely useless to them. It's taking up space in their warehouse, and I just look at it and go, for what? Well, it's paid for. Yeah, okay. And how many
what
times?
Are you talking about, man? It's paid for and it turns on. It's a
Yeah.
Well,
perfectly
no.
good mixer.
Let's not be too myopic about this. I just had Keith Urban call in, and he wanted all outboard gear, two H3000s. My dead's down to my San Diego shop. It's my San Diego shop. The deads, the boneyard is literally the size of a friggin' Walmart. I mean, we've got gear. Sometimes we sell stuff out, but every so often, what we find is that the old tried and true bands, certain bands like the Black Keys, or they come through and they want to have that analog vibe, and they need all the old school outlaw, the distressors and whatever it is. And we've got it now. Yes, it's taken up some real estate. We've kind of accommodated for that. Every so often we'll go on a little fire sale and get some of the stuff out of there. But it's not every artist, at least in our work world, wants the brand newest, bestest thing. And some of our
But Vince, you're not a small regional company. What are you, number 3 in the world for audio production?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a whole big difference between that and the guys in Mobile, Alabama that are still holding on to LS9s and KF850s, which none of them work, by the way, at this point, and so on. It's like, guys, you should have gotten rid of that stuff 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But
No,
there's the other school of thought, and this is what, when I worked for A1 Audio, my boss used to say, "Hey, if we're going to be able to do the sound without a rider, I'm going to give them great sound. What's the difference? What we're using, as long as we're giving them great sound." And I thought he was right about that. And just remember one thing for those people who own this gear: once you own it and you rent it out, it's all profit. It's just pure profit. And that's the most important thing. It's not how much money you charge, it's how much of the money you charge that you can keep.
But Jan, that was 1978. You know how many of those gigs actually come by a regional company anymore? Everybody's got specs and riders that they have to try and accommodate, and or competition that if they don't provide something that's halfway current, their competition is going to go, hey, we can give you that for the same price, only we'll give you the latest, greatest.
Yeah, I think Jan's point, though, is not every gig comes with riders, right?
That's correct.
The rider gigs, you're going to use the newer gear. Right. But when you're doing the county fair, the Arts and Crafts Festival, the Polish Fest on the first
school homecoming
or whatever, you're going to roll out those old 850s and the LS9 because they didn't have a rider. It's paid for, and why put?
And they didn't have the budget.
Gear?
That's the one, right?
And I think that's the
budget thing.
I think it's the big budget thing on that, because 90% of what I do does not have riders, and I'm covering venues between 5,000 and 10,000 people. And regional, I mean, occasionally I hit a rider, then I've got to meet it. But I keep the older gear so that if I have a second or third gig pop up on the same weekend, I've got staff. That's not my primary, but that allows me to expand without going and paying Jan a ton of money to get some more new gear. So it works back and forth. Do I want to replace my 850s? Yes. But right now they're paid for. If I need to pull them out, I can pull them out. I've got other gear to go in there. I mean, and I'm actually, during COVID, I bought some line arrays, which I never had in my system. Now I can do a bigger gig. So it's a matter of balancing. And to Jan's point, it's a cash flow for me. If I can take those 850s out and make money on the weekend, they're paid for. And they still work, they still sound. I've got my engineer now to realize how to stack them correctly. But I mean, that's you can't put them side by side, but but I mean, they work, they pay my bills.
Well, the other part
there's
is
different
that,
aspects of what we do. I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead.
but most of the mom and pop sound companies are also lights and video or lights and staging and band gear rental, and they're a one-stop shop. And the thing they have to there is, does the band care more about the lighting, care more about what video or what staging stuff they need, and they can get away with, and a lot of them are carrying, a monitor console and it'll pick everything else up. And it's more of where you spend money and what the writer that you lose a job to a writer is where you spend the money to upgrade.
Case in point, I just had this last weekend with this Sound Tribe Sector 9, STS9. I'm not always up on who's the latest, greatest, but I guess this is a pretty big jam band. And I threw an Anya rig out there. They couldn't have cared less what I did audio-wise, but they wanted 140 fixtures when it came to lighting. And this circle truss and all this bang boom, sis boom bah. Contrary to that, or in contrast, I just today sold a show that's going into AT&T Stadium here where the Giants play in the city for next week for a rather large corporate interest for Third Eye Blind with a BTX rig. So because it was budget, on that was strictly a budget constraint. And so I got the gear and I can fix and match and push and pull to make it fit. And a lot of times it just simply comes down to budget. Every so often we did Aftershock this last weekend. And I was out with Greg Price, and he took over for Big Mick. He's out front for Big Mick, and their Pro Tools rig took a shit. So I ran him out of Pro Tools rig, and we were doing Machine Gun Kelly at the time. And they had brought in their personally owned Myers rig, and they forced that on the Aftershock Festival through Blue Note Productions out of Colorado. So, every situation, there's no identical application to how you're going to proceed. And more often than not, if you can put gear that you own outright on a show, like Jan said, like many of you, I'm sure agree, that's good. I almost never make money in trucking. It's almost that market, that vertical market is almost always a loss leader. You got your own gear out there, you own it outright. I'm covering my bases with trucking. I'm covering any shortfalls in labor, so on and so forth. It is usually the place where we win the most.
Yeah. I mean, and also I want to throw this out in the room right now as well, because for you guys that are dealing in the newer equipment, where are you getting the new equipment from right now? As far as I know, all the manufacturers are back ordered now until January.
Yeah.
Unless there's something that I don't know, which also gives us a bigger life cycle for the older gear that you have.
Sure.
I mean, am I making this up, or is it true? Ken, what are you finding? I mean,
well, through the summer it was pretty good. You could still get stuff, but then toward the end of August, it's hard to come up with things. And then particularly when you start having price increases hitting, 15 to 20% price increase to a bunch of manufacturers and across the board. But it is getting hard to get things, you're basically scheduling stuff for next year is what you got to look at now.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
will
that's
say-
if you're doing an install. How back would it be you, Michael, with your installs?
So my audio is working its way through, with probably the exception of QSC. QSC is saying pretty much all their hardware, with a couple exceptions here and there, but most of their hardware is going to be late Jan, early February, some of it March of next year. Myers sound is kind of back to normal. They're now, most of their stuff is now 4 to 6 weeks out, like it was, 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Rankus has almost everything. Rankus Hines has almost everything in stock in different quantities, but they've got volume. On the video as now where I'm starting to see more challenges where I'm having to substitute gear and just get what I can. So I got a project at Smith Center, 86-inch LG screen. My first two choices just won't be available this year. So I'm going with my third choice. It's still an 86. It's still an LG, but I had to make some other accommodations on equipment behind the screen to compensate for features that I lost by having to change models. So I do spend a little bit of time now finding gear, looking for gear.
Yeah. Don, you're in the background. Do you want to come in and say anything about back orders and stuff like that? Or maybe Tom, I know you guys are
Don
stealthing.
Hartley, ladies and gentlemen, look at that beard. Look at that beard.
Hello, hello.
What
Good
do you
to see
find
everybody?
as far as
Doing pretty good in digital wireless, doing pretty good with passive speakers, doing pretty good with amplifiers, with PowerSoft, Sennheiser, EAW. A little struggle with some of the Dante stuff, quite a struggle with active speakers. I'm into next year on a lot of that, like you guys have been saying. So I can second a lot of what's been going on, but I'm also doing pretty good on some product lines as well.
Yeah, Dante's a big one across the board, and it really comes down to who was reading the tea leaves right. Legrand AV, which owns Vadio and several other brands, apparently back in August they bought 200,000 Dante chips because they saw the shortage coming. So they're good through whatever that is next year. I don't know how fast they use them, but there's other people who are saying, yeah, we have everything you want, unless it's Dante, in which case not till next year.
Yeah.
Did I not read correctly that Apple just announced that they don't have enough chips to satisfy the needs of the new iPhone 13?
I saw that headline, but I didn't read the details.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, yep. That's what they're saying. There's going to be a shortage of iPhone 13s because of they can't produce enough chips fast enough. So yeah, chips are still a problem.
I read that article. They were looking for 90 million devices by end of calendar year, and yeah, they're going to slash it by 10 million.
Yeah. So, I mean, the supply chain thing, I mean, what about Digico? How is Digico coming in, or Avid, or Soundcraft, or Yamaha? What kind of backlog are those guys going through? Did they just give your other consoles that we were talking about an extra year of life?
Well, I know that, well, first of all, the 6L just updated to 7, and it's actually quite a dense, thick-ass update. But I definitely have, I love the Avid product, big fan. They're right down the road for me here. But I've always had to, I felt like in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've always had to wait on our Avid supplies when we order out new. I just got a new Rivage in here that's pretty sweet and got it here with relatively little headache. As it relates to Digico, they seem to be, at least for our supply and what we need from them, they have been right there, Johnny on it, very little delay. As long as you get out a month ahead of your needs, they seem to be able to take care of us. Dante, on the other hand, Dante just had some issues over with Machine Gun Kelly over the weekend that was not pretty. And needed some repair parts to make a system happen and go, and couldn't everywhere we reached out. And we have some guys that's kind of all they do for us is just keep their head in the internet and chase down leads and sources, and they couldn't get their ass with either hand with Dante. So I know that it's a definite struggle with that.
Yeah,
most consoles and everything that has Dante on it is struggle to get in. I can get consoles, but I can't get Dante cards.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing also about the ship backlog in Long Beach. Basically, what's going on with that, with the containers and all of that stuff. We just sold a Digico to Hawaii, and I was surprised because we air freighted it, how fast it's going to get there. I mean, it really is going to get there overnight.
Yeah,
which is unusual.
That's what we're doing with quite a few of my manufacturers. It's coming in air.
Yeah.
Just you know, and then that way I can hit the construction timelines, and especially if I have like allocation or if I have like any type of project registrations and I know it's coming down the line, I can get it thrown on a plane from Germany or Italy and, you know, be okay. But my vendors like Roland and Tascam that are more retail oriented, some of those products have, you know, I've got them now, but I was like 30 days behind on a couple, you know, mixers and video switchers. But again, now that the ships are starting to get a little more, you know, backed up, feeling it again, you know, so it's kind of an interesting thing between the part shortage and then getting ships unloaded. It's been fun times.
Because it seems the industry is kicking in. Like, for example, I just read an article, and Michael could probably you know, expand on this. But according to the Las Vegas Independent, August marked the 6th straight $1 billion gaming revenue month in Nevada, the state's second longest $1 billion streak in 14 years. And statewide gambling revenue topped $1.165 billion in August. And the shows are going off the hook. Usher just announced that he's going into the Coliseum, I believe. Michael, what are you hearing about what's going on in Las Vegas?
I think Usher actually either already opened or is about to. And there's a whole Usher experience too, not just the show, but you know, I know you're going to want to rush back to Vegas for that, Jan. The Usher.
I'm looking for tickets right now.
Yeah, so there aren't enough shows right now, to be blunt. The shows are all going strong, selling out for the most part. There's strong demand. Originally, when Cirque came out, when was that done? Back in like April or May, and they said we're going to open one show a month till they're all open again. Those of us that know people inside Cirque, we're like, yeah, no, they're not all going to open. And now it's kind of they just might. They might.
Coming down the line.
Yeah, Ka is still the big wild card because Ka is an expensive show to put on. It costs a lot of money to put Ka on and to maintain it.
Yeah.
There's also some question of the hydraulic fluid that's used in Ka. You know, it's been sitting now for a year. Does it need to be changed? Because if that's a $300,000 oil change that normally is done every February, but they didn't. They just missed it. They had pushed it till March last year. And then, of course, they didn't do it this year. So now there's some question about, do we trust that fluid or not? And are we willing to invest 300 grand in a show that we may or may not keep open for a while? But overall, we're on fire. Y'all just need to come to Vegas so we can take your money too.
Yeah,
everybody.
It's doing good. I worked at the Wynn last Thursday with Justin Bieber and friends, and the place was incredibly packed. I mean, you would have not thought even for a second that we had any kind of problems here at all. I mean, we're talking $100,000 booze.
We don't have any problems.
Right. We have zero issues here.
We are problem free, baby. Come to Vegas.
By the way, there is one problem, and it's a good problem. The MGM is looking for a vice president of venue management and entertainment operations. Or actually, I'm sorry, not MGM, Caesars. So, hey, anyone who wants to get that job, go for it if you think you have the capabilities, because it would be great for all of us.
I want to nominate Vincent Edwards for that.
Yeah, you know,
I was going to make a smart-ass remark about this, and then you did that.
I'm not doing the hiring, but I just
Don't
want to
tempt
let
me
you
with
know
a
that I
good
just
time,
read about
goddammit. I will get up and leave right now.
I will say,
drive
yeah, you can look at George and tell him kiss your butt right there at that point, huh?
You know, I've actually had dreams doing this.
If history is any indicator, that's probably a $180,000 to $200,000 a year job. They'll work you like hell. You'll quit after 2 years, but when you work 80 hours a week, there's no time to spend that money, so you'll come out ahead.
Yeah. Just think of all the money you'll save on gas right now. You know, if you get a job like that, so you'll be working so hard. Because gas now is crazy. I can't imagine. What is it costing up in San Francisco right now? Because the last time I was up in San Francisco was ridiculously high.
$4.79 a gallon. I was in San Francisco last night picking up, you guys will laugh at this. but it was in San Francisco last night around 9 o'clock in the Richmond district, because I was picking up a board for the chapel that they had bought, and they needed my assistance, my team's assistance, to go get them an H3000. So I took them, I dropped off at H3000. They were going back. Listen, I can't, critique what the clients want. They want what they want. My job is to provide, and that's what I did. So I was just there last night, but I noticed the gas prices were $4.89 and like $5.09 for premium.
And I'll say this to Michael Fraley, as to everyone, but to Michael as well. We joke about the LS932 with the Dante card. And I don't do production work. I'm just an installer. I keep a little bit of live gear because of the churches we do in case something breaks down, right? So I will tell you that LS932, people laugh at it, but not on Sunday morning when they call me and go, hey, my mixer just died. Do you have anything?
Yeah.
I go, well, I got an LS932 with a Dante card, and they're like, bring it. That's phenomenal. We'll take it. You're a lifesaver.
Look, I hate the jog wheel and that you can't do anything with the screen. The screen's just too small. Okay.
That's true.
However, I think still to this day that the LS9 leaps and bounds above an X32 or anything like that.
Sure.
I mean, just right out the gate, being able to put front of house on 1 through 32 and monitors on 33 through 64, so you got dynamics on one side and none on the other, is just, they knocked it out of the park with that. Nobody else does that to this day.
It's a very utilitarian board. I mean, I haven't used one in years, but we actually got more than one in our inventory for the weird moments when it needs to come out. I've
got one sitting right there.
Yeah.
You guys, and also in the Yamaha Museum, the Ancient History Museum of Yamaha, they've got one there as well.
No. There's no PM4K around here.
PM5B, baby.
The legacy. Actually, the PM1000 and PM2000s are still popular in certain areas, and I've got a guy that's looking for one of each, and I can't seem to find one for him.
My brother will go out, George is my brother, and every so often he'll go out and do this club thing he does with this band that we came up with since we were kids, when we first originally got into the game. And he loves his 4000, his PM 4000. To him, it's his club board. He hasn't taken the time to get into the digital world. He don't need to, he just sells shows and sits behind his big desk. But people got their favorites, and God damn it, when he gets out in front of that thing, although he likes to put his foot in the gas and peel faces, that's kind of his style of mixing. He can put on a pretty damn good show. You got the right outboard gear.
Am I correct in saying that Roger Waters still goes out with an XL4?
I believe you're correct about that. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely. I have 5.
Greg, turn on your video, man.
And one of them is a Mavis. Nobody has a Mavis.
No.
But you get that call, saying, do you have any analog desks? Oh, and I went, yeah, it's going to cost you. And they're paid for it 10 times over. So.
And doesn't KISS require a heritage?
I don't know about now.
Not for much longer.
Yeah.
What is that? Some reference to their end? They're coming off the road, because I've done the end of Zurich KISS tours for like 8 times. Yeah. It's like they're the king of the mortgage tour, the king of the farewell experience. It's such horse shit with those guys.
But this time it's really, 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 really true.
Barbara Streisand did that to me 6 times.
Yeah.
Like if there's one guy
so
left
did the
in
Who.
No.
If there's one guy left in the original band and they need the money, they're still going out,
That's right. The mortgage needs to be paid.
Right, yeah, or taxes.
because Gene Simmons is never going to stop trying to make money.
A friend of mine,
that's true.
He said to me yesterday, 2 days ago, he said, I saw Gene Simmons this weekend, and it was a gal, and he came up to me and said, I was a beautiful and intelligent woman. And I said, oh man, really? He said that to you? And she said, yeah, it really made me feel good. I said, I don't want to burst your bubble, but I've been dealing with this guy for 30 years, and he's told me that I was a handsome and intelligent human male 40 different times. And I don't think he remembers me from every time consecutively before that, because he says that to everybody.
Well, hey, look, we've had a lot of fun today, and I'm going to say goodbye to the people on Facebook and YouTube. Just remember, if you want to join the panel, just DM us or send us an email. Just contact us, and we'll send you the link on how to get involved with the panel. But just remember, everything you heard here today is an opinion. We're going to keep going, but we're going to say goodbye to you people who are watching us online. So thanks a lot for joining us. Remember, you make it happen. Stay safe and stay healthy. And we will see you again next Wednesday at the same time in the same place. So thanks again for coming. And we're going to go off the air now.
See you guys.